Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram, Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to Friday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. On today's show, we're mostly going to be discussing comic book movie fatigue. Superhero fatigue. Is it true? Is it false? Or is it just an excuse for creative bankruptcy? We will get into that very, very shortly. But first, I want to divert back to yesterday's video, where we spoke about a Deadline.com article claiming that the audition process to cast the new Supergirl, as part of the brand new DC universe would begin, or they were going to make a straight offer to a star for the role. Now, James Gunn has responded with a statement on social media in context towards these recent rumours. He doesn't reference the Supergirl rumours or the Deadline.com article in general, but it's a generalisation of what's been reported recently. So let's give it a read. It's difficult to debunk stories that are fake, but with some element of truth. Either I have to point out what's fake and what's true and give away a bunch of stuff I don't want to, or I just say the whole thing is fake and get accused of dishonesty down the line when the one true part comes out. Anyway, there's a couple of those stories around recently. Now, James Gunn has given us statements like this in the past, that there are rumours out there that have an element of truth to them, but are also fake. He's clearly referencing the Supergirl situation. Could it be that they are going to make a direct offer to a star, or they already have their Supergirl, and the element of the audition process beginning was fake news? That could be the situation. Or could it be a situation that James Gunn has the same problems with capping the leaks at DC that the DCEU did? Or is James Gunn just leaking out fake rumours, fake denying them just to bring some fake kind of hype to DC Universe? I don't know. I do know one thing, that the only people hyping DC Universe up are the same people that were hyping up last year's DCEU movies. Could these be non-fans? Could these be studio bots? Because we've heard rumours about studio bots in the past. This is just a studio trying to create fake hype for a universe that has no interest. Because let's be honest about this, the only two DC movies to make money in the past few years are Joker and The Batman. The Joker with over $1 billion at the global box office, and The Batman with around $750 million at the global box office. That would say that actually there's no interest in a cinematic universe, but there is interest in Todd Phillips and Matt Reeves making DC movies. Is that what's really happening here? Well, the box office tells you everything you need to know. Shazam barely made any money. But then the next movie, Joker, made $1 billion. Make it make sense. It's all there. There is no interest in a DC cinematic universe since Snyder left. Although commercially, the Snyderverse wasn't that successful, it was a lot more successful in terms of, financially in the box office than these other DCEU movies since Snyder left. These are the facts. I'm not making it up. So all these rumours, all these leaks could be all being leaked out by the studio and James Gunn. And all this hype from all these DC accounts, right? These fan accounts could just be studio bots. In truth, I don't know what to tell you. Now, I like the fact that James Gunn speaks to fans, and I like the fact that he debunks fake rumours. It helps pundits like me out, because I know what's true and what's false. But also, when a respected, when a respected site, news company like Deadline.com are reporting something like that, I have to report it. I have to talk about it on the DC Universe Daily. That's what we're here for, to inform you, whether it's rumours. Now, I read out the article. I didn't tell you if it was true or not. I don't know if it's true or not. But even Gunn says himself there's an element of truth to it. So is Gunn a genuine guy who's trying to debunk stuff, or is he part of the leaking process, or even worse, he can't keep a cap on the leaks? Either scenario doesn't make him or DC Studios look very competent, does it now? I love DC. I want DC Universe to work. I want Elseworlds to work. I'm sad and frustrated with what happened with Snyder and the original DC Extended Universe, but I can't remain in Groundhog Day. So as I say, I don't know what to tell you at this point. I suppose we'll find out in July of 2025 if the hype for Superman Legacy is real. Personally, I am hyped for Superman Legacy. I'm going to wait to judge the sandwich once I've taken a bite out of it. I don't know if any of this is going to be successful or it's going to fail. How could I? Neither do you. So there's that. Now let's move on to the main talking point of today's DC Universe Daily, which is superhero movie fatigue. Is it true? Is it false? Well, let's look at the evidence. Let's look at the MCU since thereafter Endgame. That, we look at Spider-Man No Way Home that made around $2 billion at the global box office because it was a very, very good film. Then there's Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which made just under $1 billion. They're the highest grossing MCU movies to date. Although I did forget about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which also was reviewed very strongly and made good money again, making just under $1 billion. Guardians 3 was a very good movie, so was Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, if it were me, in terms of Endgame and thereafter, I would have given the Marvel Cinematic Universe cinematically a break. I would have ended the MCU there and then. If I was Kevin Feige, I would have made a big announcement. That is the end of the MCU story here at Marvel Studios. We are now going to build out an X-Men and Fantastic Four universe. It's going to take us from 3 to 5 years to build that out. So there'll be nothing in cinemas for Marvel. But we will build out a mini television universe to plug the gap while we're developing X-Men and Fantastic Four. You still could have had your WandaVisions and all that stuff, or whatever they were going to do on D+, but given the cinematic universe a break. But Endgame should have been the end of the Marvel Cinematic Universe story, and the building out of the X-Men and the Fantastic Four Cinematic Universe story should have begun. That's where they should be going. Like, X-Men and Fantastic Four shouldn't be a continuation of the MCU. It should be a new thing. Those two worlds can absolutely be connected or be separate universes. They bought Fox. That was part of the reason Disney bought out Fox, right? They're building out an X-Men universe and a Fantastic Four universe. All they had to do was finish the MCU and focus on X-Men and Fantastic Four. That was their big mistake. They've made several other big mistakes like the rest of Hollywood are doing, with being too diverse and too blatant about their diversity, employing producers and writers that may be diverse but are not talented enough to build out a cinematic universe. This is what's happened with Phase 4 and Phase 5 of Marvel. But after all, this is the DC Universe Daily. Was it a mistake to decide to do a DC Universe cinematic universe? Is there any money in it? Or is the real money in films like Joker and the Batman universes? I think you know what I think about that. I think the future is directors like Matt Reeves and Todd Phillips doing their individual little mini universes. proper auteurs, proper filmmakers with their own individual takes and visions on these DC universes and characters. The money's there. That's where the money is. Original movies from visionaries, right? The last DCEU movies to actually make money were from a visionary like Zack Snyder, and $1 billion for Aquaman from a visionary like James Wan. I know the sequel he made hasn't made a lot of money. It's not really his fault, is it now? He's had to deal with a swarm of interference from James Gunn and Warner Brothers Discovery. It's clear that movie was interfered with. The same bright colours and bad gags as the rest of the DCEU that's flopped. But is superhero movie fatigue a reality? It is and it isn't. When I talk to members of the general audience, because I do talk to a lot of different people, not just on the internet, but in reality. And when they hear that a brand new superhero movie is in development, they roll their eyes. They're not very interested. So audiences are a little bit fatigued. There's no question about that. But I think the problem is it's bad movie fatigue. It's creative bankruptcy fatigue that's the real problem here. As I've said, The Batman, Joker, Spider-Man No Way Home, Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse are making money. There's hype around those movies because the Spider-Verse movies are made by visionaries. Two of the best comic book movies ever made. Forget the fact they're animated. That's nothing to do with it. They're comic book movies. They're made by visionaries like Lord and Miller, and they're beautiful and they're bold and they have a brilliant take. The Joker, made by a visionary. The Batman, made by a visionary. It's no accident that those fucking movies made money. It's no accident that Spider-Man No Way Home, the first Spider-Man film prior to the Spider-Verse movies, to actually have something interesting to say about Spider-Man and his universe in a multiversal movie, worked. Bringing back Tobey Maguire and Andy Garfield worked. They weren't in it a hell of a lot. They were in the third act, basically, but it worked. And that film had something interesting to say about Tom Holland's Peter Parker and Spider-Man as he went really dark and vengeful when Aunt May dies. Brilliant movie. And I know a lot of people hate Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, but it's a much better movie than most of the other stuff we've had from Phase 4 and Phase 5. I think the coloration here is that what happened was in the peak of the MCU, they could put out crappy mid movies and still make money. Because For the Dark World still made money. Iron Man 3 made a hell of a lot of fucking money because it was rolling off the hype of the first Avengers, written and directed by Joss Whedon. But what's happened now is, when we look at Ant-Man, Quantumania, the third movie, it wasn't a very good, interesting movie. People didn't support it. People had no interest in the Marvels. That flopped as well. And then you look at last year's DC movies, movies that you would think should have made an element of money. Like if we look back to Shazam! Fury of the Gods, a half decent solid movie, but people don't want half decent solid CBMs. They want excellence. It's not there with the Shazam sequel. Then you've got the Flash movie, and I think there's so many reasons why that movie wasn't successful. Reports on Ezra Miller and the problems he had outside of the movie universe and in reality were really a big thing. When someone's accused of being a member of a cult, being accused of having a friendship with a child, and things like this, whether they're true or not, are not going to go down well. And we know the person was arrested. The Flash movie was always going to have a problem because Ezra Miller was that problem. But again, that film is a mixture, of the bad, the good, and the ugly, basically. It has great elements to it. Michael Keaton's Batman, yes, loved it. Sasha Calle's Supergirl, loved it. Now, like, all the cameos at the end got mocked by a lot of people, calling it bad CGI and AI. I actually got quite emotional seeing the way they did it. I can understand why a lot of people didn't like it. That wasn't really my problem with the movie. The problem is that the Flashpoint story, in terms of the graphic novel and the animated movie, is stunning and beautiful and compelling. That graphic novel is as strong as the Spider-Verse movies. Really, really strong. All they had to do was copy and paste that fucking movie. But they didn't want to do it. And instead, they adapted it badly. Because why have you got Christina Hodgson writing a Flash movie? Look, I've seen Christina about on the circuit. I like her. She's a nice girl. She's very excitable. She loves comics. She loves the genre. But I'm sorry, Chris, you shouldn't be part of the new DC Universe writing team. And you are. You don't have the ability. And also, you are a progressive that has issues with straight white males. It's obvious, right? When we see that moment in The Flash when, Batman and The Flash are holding, the lasso of Hastian, and you got Batman saying that, he's rich and he's a problem and he's arrogant and all that. We know that's coming from your political ideology, right? And making fun of the Flash for being, a virgin or something? Ridiculous. You just took the opportunity to mock a couple of straight guys, right? Pathetic. Pathetic. I'll say it again. Pathetic. So, when we talk about superhero movie fatigue, comic book movie fatigue, you can't just say, oh, it's fatigue. So every time Variety report on low box offices for superhero movies, they put it down to superhero movie fatigue. But it's not just about that. There is a fatigue there. There's a bad superhero movie fatigue. But when you make good ones, they'll work and they'll bring in the bacon. You can't make as many comic book movies as they were making, right? There's not a hunger to have 4 or 5 superhero movies a year, whether it's the MCU or DC Universe. This year, we've only got one Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, which is Deadpool. Deadpool 3. And the only reason they're able to put that out as an MCU movie is because they bought Fox. The reason Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool has nothing to do with Kevin Feige, but he's going to jump on Ryan's shoulders and hopefully be successful with that movie. But the problem is, from what I can see from Deadpool 3, it's another piece of cameo bait. They seem to be wanting to bring back everything from Fox's X-Men universe. I don't see how that's got an original story to it. And having Hugh Jackman's Logan Wolverine is problematic after the character's story finished off so beautifully in James Mangold's Logan. Brilliant movie, brilliant end. Now they're squeezing this in as a pre-Logan story, right? Now, I love the banter between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. It will probably be a fun, entertaining movie, hopefully. Because if this movie fails, the MCU are in huge fucking trouble. Because this movie should automatically have hype, interest, and excitement. Where's C about that? So, I think the key element here is that there is a fatigue, but it's mostly because of the bad superhero comic book movies they're making. Because when you make them good, like Spider-Man No Way Home, the Spider-Verse movies, the Joker, the Batman, people are very, very interested in visionary takes of the superhero genre. That's where we are today. That's why Oppenheimer did so well. It's nothing to do with superheroes, but it's a biopic. It's a story about a historical event, and they try and be as accurate and factual as they can. For example, many other creatives would have probably made, Oppenheimer a black man, right? But Christopher Nolan isn't that way inclined. He's accurate with his casting and he's accurate with his storytelling because it's a moment in history that is important to him, and it was important to tell it accurately. We recently saw a historical figure in Doctor Who culturally swap. It's one thing to culturally swap a fictional character, right? There's always been one culture and one colour. That's bad enough, but when you're doing it with historical figures, it's really, really bad. And, there's no defence of it. And they can call people racists and, phobes and isms and all of that, but we know the truth. In fact, they're more phobic against straight white males than the audience are of everybody else. That's the truth. I think the problem is they relied on superhero movies far too much. WB barely was successful with the DCEU. They wasn't successful. Commercially, the Snyderverse didn't work. Yes, that his movies made more money or brought in more box office than the other ones did once he left, right? So why was a movie like Joker and the Batman more commercially viable than Snyder's take? Because Snyder's take is a visionary take like Matt's Batman take and Todd's Joker take. Because Matt's and Todd's takes were visionary, like Zach's were, but Zach was in a cinematic universe that was supposed to be for the general audience, where Matt's take is outside of that. So people are more open to, an unconventional take of Batman. People are more open to an unconventional take at Joker. A Joker who has a name for the first time and an identity, right? Because it's outside, it's elseworld, it's nothing to do with a cinematic universe. So you can take a few more liberties with it. But Zack was part of a mainstream cinematic universe that wasn't mainstream and it was unconventional. And people were saying, well, you sold this to us, that it was for us, that it was going to be DC's version of the MCU, and it's not. It's the expectations. When you give people an expectation of something, when you wrap something up and say it's a PS5 and they open it up and it's smelly old socks, what do you think people are going to react? How do you think people are going to react? Well, I don't think the Snyderverse is anywhere near smelly old socks. I adore the Snyderverse, but it wasn't what people were sold. It's as simple as that. I think Man of Steel is a lot more made for the mainstream audience than BVS was, but the mainstream audience rejected the Snyderverse, and commercially it didn't make the money the studio wanted it to make and needed it to make. So, this is why the Joker did well. This is why the Batman did well, because there was no mainstream expectations of it. But there is a problem in this industry today, and it is creative bankruptcy. The wrong people at the wrong time are running these huge conglomerate studios. The wrong people are being employed. They're being employed for their identity rather than their ability. There's very few, as I keep on saying, titans of industry there. I was on X last night before I went to bed, an hour before I went to bed, and all down my timeline was news about brand new movies on streaming and cinematically being greenlit. Everything was basically starring a woman or a diverse character. And it's boring. I saw one movie announced starring a straight white male. And I made a joke. I said, wow, that's diversity these days, isn't it? So this is the problem. Like you get this announcement, oh, it's this actress, she's going to direct a movie about a historical gay character. That's all they're interested in. Not that I have a problem with gay characters having stories and being leads in movies, but does it sell? Who's going to watch that, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing that. I'm saying you can't replace those type of stories and basically say, we're not going to have straight guys as leads anymore. We're just going to have diverse figures as leads now. Straight white males have had their time, so we're benching them. We're replacing all of them. Every TV show is now literally starring a woman. So there's no balance in Hollywood anymore. And this is the problem. For example, the MCU did it. Most of the new MCU and new Avengers are diverse characters and women. And, that's not palatable. You can't just dump, right? They dumped, Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, or he quit. Smartly quit. He got off the Titanic just in time. Chris Evans left as Captain America. And, these characters are being replaced with diverse figures. Ironheart, the brand new Captain America of colour. Not that I have a problem with that, because the same character of colour is a version of Captain America in the comics. That's not the point. But you can't just replace everything that people loved with something else that isn't as appealing to the audience. And that's the point. And I think that's the issue today. Now, I've come to a realization that I shouldn't really keep on banging my head against the brick wall. Somebody posted, the other day, remember when we loved watching Star Wars? And I said, well, stop bashing your head against a brick wall. Star Wars, Disney Star Wars is crap. It's all about their ideology and casting diverse people and having diverse people make these movies without any talent. Go back, watch Empire of Dreams, watch the brilliant 6 Star Wars movies that George gave us, and forget about Disney Star Wars. Everyone needs to stop bashing their head against a brick wall. You kind of know when a superhero movie isn't going to be that good. In terms of what James Gunn's doing, we have no idea if it's going to be good or not, because his record is pretty solid with comic book content. In terms of his trilogy, Guardians trilogy, and Peacemaker, it was pretty solid, right? And The Suicide Squad was a pretty good movie as well. So we don't know if he's going to cook or if he's going to burn the meal that he's cooking. We have no idea at the moment. There are red flags there, but there are also positives to get excited about as well. But as I said on the top of the show, I have no idea how all of this is going to end up. But I just feel there's common sense, and the entertainment industry have no common sense anymore. They've become ultra political, and obsessed with their own political ideology. There's no balance there. If you make movies where you tell people your views are shit, and if you believe in this side of the political argument, you're a piece of shit and you're scum. That's what they're telling people. They're not making any money. Let's not just talk about the green lighting of diverse content they're making today, which is boring and doesn't capture the imagination. All those interviews, right? With, they were interviewing Kristen Stewart, the actress, and she was talking so much crazy shit. It was hilarious. I couldn't stop laughing. How studios allow these, these ideological fools to speak their shit. And it's off-putting. It puts audiences off, or they're not interested. So the entertainment industry has changed, and that's a big part of this subject. You can't just say the superhero movie fatigue when the real issue is bad movie fatigue. And we're getting a lot of uninteresting comic book movies. That's the truth. Most of Marvel Phase 4 was boring. Marvel Phase 5 so far hasn't been any better. Echo hasn't been that highly reviewed. Lots of people haven't enjoyed Echo. It's the same old problems, the diverse narrative. We're so brave and powerful for, having a deaf character as the lead, and everyone had to learn to do sign language. Well, that's great, but who cares? Is that going to put butts in seats? No. But if you actually had a deaf female lead that was interesting in a story that captures the imagination, then that would be real powerful diversity. And that's the real problem. The real problem isn't the fact that they're diverse, right, and inclusive. The fact is that they feel that if they promote on diversity instead of a good story and a good movie or TV drama, that they can still bring people in. And they get upset when it doesn't happen. And that's the problem today. And from what I can see, nothing is going to change. So let's see what happens. But it is interesting as I finish off and we move away from superhero movie fatigue in that conversation. A lot of people are upset with James Gunn for not continuing with Sasha Calle as Supergirl. Some people actually calling him a racist. I don't think that's the case. Let me just say this. Sasha Calle was cast as Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, not only to play Supergirl, but to replace Henry Cavill's Superman. Do you think she lost any sleep about that? No, she did not. She couldn't give a fuck. I think her Supergirl was very, very solid. I didn't have an issue with her Supergirl. I do have an issue with Supergirl replacing Superman. Sasha has been very unlucky. She's being replaced because a new leadership took over DC. It's just bad luck. Or could we call it karma? Not that I think she deserves any karma, but isn't it ironic that the woman who was brought in to replace Henry Cavill's Superman is now being replaced herself? The irony there isn't lost on me.